Have you ever lost something you loved, only to discover fate had other plans? In small-town Montana, a little girl's sacrifice of her beloved dog ignites a journey spanning years and exposing Hollywood's darkest secrets. This isn't just another dog story. It's about a bond so powerful it changed an entire industry. Hit subscribe and comment where you're watching from. You won't want to miss this emotional reunion story. Rain hammered against the weathered, clapboard houses of Oak Ridge, Montana, a forgotten dot on the map where everyone still left their doors unlocked at night. 9-year-old Emily Matthews pressed her freckled nose against her bedroom window, watching lightning split the darkened sky. Her wheat blonde hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her overalls were patched at the knees, hand-me-downs from her cousin in Billings. "Emily Jean, don't you dare go outside in this storm," her mother called from downstairs, where she was sorting coupons at the kitchen table. But Emily had already spotted something moving in the drainage ditch alongside Miller Road, something small and struggling. Without hesitation, she grabbed her yellow raincoat from the hook behind her door and quietly slipped down the back stairs. The wind nearly knocked her tiny frame over as she pushed against the screen door. Rain stung her cheeks as she ran, splashing through puddles that soaked her worn sneakers. As she approached the ditch, she could make out a small, wet bundle of fur trying desperately to climb up the muddy slope. "Hey there," Emily whispered, sliding down to where the creature was fighting against the rising water. A puppy, no more than a few months old, looked up at her with intelligent amber eyes. His German Shepherd markings were barely visible through the mud and grime. "You're okay now," she soothed, scooping him into her arms. The puppy trembled violently but didn't resist. "I've got you." Back at the house, Emily snuck through the side door into the laundry room. She quickly wrapped the puppy in an old towel and tucked him inside her raincoat. "Emily Matthews, you're tracking mud all over my clean floor." Her mother stood in the doorway, hands on her hips. Sarah Matthews looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes from working double shifts at the diner and the supermarket. "Mom, I found him in the ditch," Emily blurted, opening her jacket to reveal the puppy. He was drowning. Sarah's expression shifted from anger to concern, then to resignation. "Honey, we can't. Please, Mom. Just tonight. Then we can find his owners tomorrow." "Your father's going to have a fit," Sarah sighed, approaching to examine the puppy. "The factory's cutting hours again, and medical bills from his back injury are piling up. We can barely feed ourselves." "I'll use my allowance for dog food," Emily said firmly. "And I'll clean Mrs. Henderson's garage like she asked." "Please, Mom. He'll die out there." The puppy chose that moment to poke his head out from the towel and give a small, pathetic whimper. Sarah's resistance crumbled. "One night, just to dry him off and feed him. Then we put up found dog posters first thing tomorrow." Emily's face lit up with a smile that pushed away some of the worry lines from her mother's face. "Thank you. I'll take care of everything." Later that night, after sneaking the puppy some leftover meatloaf and creating a makeshift bed from an old blanket in her room, Emily whispered to her new friend. "I'm going to call you Brave," she decided, stroking his now dry fur. "Because you didn't give up in that ditch, even when things looked really bad." Brave licked her hand as if in agreement, his eyes never leaving her face. "Don't worry," she promised. "I won't let anything bad happen to you. Ever." Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside Emily's small bedroom, a bond was forming that would change both their lives forever. 3 weeks had passed, and the found dog posters around Oak Ridge remained unanswered. Emily's one night with Brave had quietly transformed into permanent residency, though not without resistance. That dog ate half a loaf of bread off the counter. Tom Matthews thundered, his weathered face flushed with anger. At 42, he looked a decade older, his body bent from years at the factory and the recent back injury that had him on workers' comp, which barely covered a third of his normal wages. "I'm sorry, Dad," Emily said, standing protectively beside Brave, who seemed to understand he was in trouble. "I'll pay for it from my allowance." "It's not about the bread, Em," Tom sighed, wincing as he lowered himself into his recliner. "It's about reality. We're behind on the mortgage. The electric company is threatening to cut us off. Your mom's working herself to death. We can't afford another mouth to feed." Sarah laid a gentle hand on her husband's shoulder. "Tom, she's been taking care of him just like she promised." Mrs. Henderson gave her $20 for cleaning out that garage. Emily knelt beside her father's chair. And Mr. Wilson said he'll pay me to water his garden while he visits his daughter in Chicago. I've been teaching Brave tricks, too. Look, she stood up straight. Brave, sit. The puppy immediately sat, his eyes locked on Emily. Shake. A paw was extended. Roll over. Brave executed a perfect roll. Tom's eyebrows rose. You taught him all that in 3 weeks. He's really smart, Dad. Emily beamed. Watch this. Brave, find Mom's keys. The German Shepherd puppy immediately trotted to the kitchen counter, stood on his hind legs, and pushed Sarah's car keys toward the edge with his nose. Good boy, Emily praised, offering a small treat from her pocket. Well, I'll be damned, Tom murmured. Language, Sarah reminded him, but she was smiling too. That's actually impressive, honey. He's special, Emily insisted. Please, can he stay? I promise I'll earn his keep. Tom and Sarah exchanged looks, that silent communication of parents weighing difficult decisions. 3 months, Tom finally said. If you can cover his expenses for 3 months, we'll revisit the conversation. Emily threw her arms around her father's neck, careful of his injured back. Thank you, Daddy. You won't regret it. That night, Emily sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor while Brave curled beside her. Rain tapped gently against the window, a peaceful echo of the storm that had brought them together. We've got 3 months to prove ourselves, she whispered, scratching behind his ears. I've got some ideas for more tricks to teach you. As if understanding, Brave placed a paw on her knee and looked directly into her eyes. There was something almost human in that gaze, an intelligence that sometimes gave Emily goosebumps. You know what, boy? I think you're going to surprise everyone. Word spread quickly in Oak Ridge about the Matthews girl and her remarkably intelligent dog. People would stop Emily on the street, asking to see tricks. By the end of the month, she had a small business going. $5 to demonstrate Brave's growing repertoire of commands, which now included fetching specific items, distinguishing between colors, and even recognizing simple written words on cards. That ain't natural, old Mrs. Finch muttered after watching Brave identify which cup a treat was hidden under. Dogs don't think like that. But most townsfolk were charmed, especially when Emily used her earnings to donate dog food to the local shelter. The struggling town had little entertainment, and the girl and her dog provided a welcome distraction from the shuttered storefronts and economic worry. You're famous, Emily giggled to Brave as they walked home one evening, her pockets heavy with earned dollars. And we're halfway to proving Dad wrong. She couldn't have known then how prophetic her words would be, or how their newfound local fame would soon catch the attention of someone who would change their lives forever. Early autumn painted Oak Ridge in amber and gold, a beautiful disguise for a town in decline. The local factory had announced another round of layoffs, and a grim mood hung over Main Street despite the cheerful decorations for the upcoming Harvest Festival. Emily stood in front of Gunderson's General Store, where she had permission to perform with Brave every Saturday. A small crowd had gathered to watch, larger than usual due to festival preparations. Okay, Brave, Emily announced, her voice carrying across the sidewalk. Show us what you've learned this week. She laid out 5 photographs, a car, a tree, a cat, a house, and a ball. Brave, find the home. Without hesitation, the now 6-month-old German Shepherd placed his paw directly on the house picture. Good boy, Emily beamed. Now the vehicle. Again, Brave selected correctly, earning murmurs of appreciation from the onlookers. That's nothing, Emily said with growing confidence. Watch this, Brave, spell your name. She laid out alphabet cards. Methodically, Brave selected B, then R, then A, V, and E. Holy smokes, whispered Mr. Jenkins, the hardware store owner. That dog's smarter than half the folks in town. A man at the back of the crowd watched with particular intensity. Unlike the locals in their worn jeans and flannel, he wore an expensive leather jacket and designer sunglasses. After Emily finished her demonstration and began collecting the $5 bills people handed her, he approached. Impressive work, he said, his California accent immediately marking him as an outsider. I've never seen a dog that young processed language symbols. Emily looked up, suddenly shy. Thanks. He's special. More than special. The man removed his sunglasses, revealing keen gray eyes. I'm Jackson Reed. I train animals for film and television in Los Angeles. Emily's eyes widened. Like for movies? Exactly like for movies. He handed her a business card with a Hollywood studio logo. That dog of yours has a gift I haven't seen in 20 years in the business. Before Emily could respond, her mother appeared, grocery bags in hand. Emily? Who's this? After introductions, Jackson explained his presence in Montana, visiting a specialty breeder in Missoula, and his interest in Brave. I'd like to come by your home, discuss some possibilities, he said smoothly. That dog could have a real future. Sarah Matthews looked skeptical but gave him their address. My husband will want to be part of any discussion about Brave. That evening, the Matthews family sat stiffly in their living room while Jackson outlined his proposal. $50,000, he repeated, as Tom's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. For full ownership and rights. Brave would come to Los Angeles with me, be trained professionally, and potentially star in major productions. $50,000, Tom whispered, his mind clearly calculating mortgage payments and medical bills. Plus 5% of his earnings if he books any national campaigns or feature films, Jackson added. He has the potential to be extraordinary. Emily, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. You want to take him away? Jackson softened his tone. It's an opportunity, Emily, for him to reach his full potential. For your family to have financial breathing room. But he's my dog, she said, voice quavering. Brave, sensing her distress, pressed against her legs. Emily, her father began gently. This could help us keep the house. I don't care about the house. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I care about Brave. She ran from the room, the German shepherd at her heels. The adults heard her bedroom door slam. She'll come around, Tom said apologetically. It's just a shock. Jackson nodded understandingly. I'll be in town for 3 more days. Here's my card. Think it over as a family. After he left, Sarah sat beside her husband on the couch. Tom, I know what this money would mean for us, but nothing, he interrupted. This is a miracle, Sarah. The answer to our prayers. Upstairs, Emily buried her face in Brave's fur, making a different kind of prayer altogether, one for a solution that wouldn't tear them apart. There has to be another way, she whispered. There just has to be. The fight lasted 3 days. Arguments over breakfast, tense silences at dinner, and late-night conversations that Emily could hear through the thin walls of their aging home. She's just a child, her mother would say. That dog is her best friend. And what about her future? Her father would counter. What about keeping a roof over her head? The bank isn't taking dog tricks as mortgage payments, Sarah. On the evening before Jackson Reed's departure from Montana, Emily sat on her bed with Brave's head in her lap. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her decision already made, though it felt like swallowing broken glass. A soft knock came at her door. Em, can we talk? Her father's voice, gentler than it had been in weeks. Come in, she said, not looking up from Brave's fur. Tom Matthews entered, moving carefully to manage his back pain. He sat on the edge of her bed, the springs creaking under his weight. Your mom told me you want to see Mr. Reed tomorrow, he said cautiously. Emily nodded. I have conditions. Tom's eyebrows rose. Conditions? If Brave goes with him. Emily said, her young voice steady with forced maturity. I want regular updates. Pictures, videos, letters about how he's doing. And I want to be able to call him sometimes, even if it's just on speakerphone. Her father studied her face. You're sure about this? No, Emily admitted, a tear escaping despite her efforts. But I overheard you talking to the bank yesterday. I know we might lose the house. Tom's face crumpled. Sweetheart, you shouldn't have to worry about. I'm not a baby dad. I know things are bad. And she swallowed hard. Brave deserves a chance to do amazing things. He's too special to just stay in Oak Ridge forever. Tom wrapped an arm around his daughter's thin shoulders. You're pretty special yourself, Emily Matthews. The next morning, Jackson Reed sat at their kitchen table, reviewing the handwritten contract Emily had prepared. His expression wavered between amusement and genuine respect. Monthly updates, he read aloud. Photos every 2 weeks. Phone calls on holidays. And a visit once a year if he's doing well in training. Is that acceptable, Mr. Reed? Emily asked formally, trying to sound grown-up despite her breaking heart. Jackson smiled. It's more than fair, Miss Matthews. I'll have my lawyer draw up official paperwork that includes these provisions. The actual parting was brief. Emily knew dragging it out would only make things worse. She knelt before Brave in the driveway, holding his face between her small hands. "You're going on an adventure," she told him, fighting to keep her voice steady. "You're going to be a movie star. And I'll see you again, I promise." Brave whined softly, licking a tear from her cheek. "Take care of him," she said to Jackson as he gently led Brave toward his rental car. "He doesn't like thunderstorms, and he needs his blue ball when he's nervous." "I will," Jackson assured her, clearly moved by the girl's composure. "He'll have the best of everything." Emily stood between her parents, her mother's hand gripping her shoulder almost painfully tight as the car pulled away. Brave's face appeared in the back window, ears perked and eyes fixed on Emily until the car turned the corner and disappeared. Only then did Emily collapse, her father catching her as sobs tore through her small body. "You did the right thing," her mother whispered, kneeling to embrace her. "You were so brave, just like him." That night, Emily's room felt cavernously empty without Brave's warm presence at the foot of her bed. She clutched his collar, which Jackson had kindly left behind at her request. "Good night, Brave," she whispered to the empty room. "I hope Hollywood is treating you nice tonight." 500 miles away, in a luxury pet hotel in Salt Lake City, Brave lay awake in a plush bed, his nose pointed toward the east, toward the girl he'd left behind. The first check arrived 2 weeks after Brave's departure, $25,000, with the remainder promised upon completion of his initial training. Tom Matthews stared at it in disbelief before driving straight to the bank, returning with lighter shoulders and a smile Emily hadn't seen in months. "We're keeping the house," he announced at dinner, "and I'm scheduling that back surgery the doctor recommended." The promised updates from Jackson Reed came like clockwork: professional photographs of Brave and training facilities, detailed letters about his progress, and occasional videos that Emily watched until the family's ancient laptop nearly overheated. "He's learning to hit marks," Jackson wrote in month 3, "standing exactly where he needs to be on camera every time. The trainers are calling him a natural." Emily traced Brave's image on the screen. He looked healthy, his coat gleaming, but his eyes seemed different somehow, focused but missing their old spark. "Is he happy?" she asked during their first scheduled phone call on Christmas. "He's adjusting," Jackson replied carefully. "These transitions take time." When she called Brave's name through the speakerphone, Jackson reported that his ears had perked up, that he'd searched the room for her. Emily wasn't sure whether to believe him. Time passed with aching slowness for a child, but brought changes nonetheless. The Matthews family moved from financial crisis to cautious stability. Tom's surgery was successful, allowing him to take a less physically demanding job at the town's administrative office. Sarah cut back to just one job, spending evenings at home rather than serving late-night diners. Emily, now 10, then 11, channeled her loneliness into studying. Fascinated by what Brave had shown her about animal intelligence, she checked out every book on dog behavior and training from the small-town library, then convinced her parents to drive her to the larger library in Billings monthly for more advanced reading. "She's reading at a high school level," her teacher told Sarah during a conference. "And her science project on canine cognition was extraordinary." Has she considered working with animals professionally? The question planted a seed. For Emily's 12th birthday, her parents gifted her apprenticeship days with Oak Ridge's only veterinarian, Dr. Wendell, who quickly recognized her unusual affinity for animals. "You've got the touch," he told her after watching her calm a typically aggressive farm dog. "They trust you instinctively." Meanwhile, Brave's updates grew less frequent entering the 3rd year. The monthly letters became quarterly, then sporadic. Emily noticed the photos showed him exclusively in training scenarios. No candid moments, no signs of play or relaxation. "He's very busy," Jackson explained when Emily questioned this during a rare call. "He's booking work regularly now, commercials mostly, but we're auditioning for a big film opportunity." In their 4th year apart, the updates stopped entirely. Emails went unanswered. Phone calls to Jackson's office were fielded by assistants who promised to pass along the message. Finally, after months of silence, a terse email arrived. Brave struggled with the transition to film work. Performance anxiety became unmanageable despite our best efforts. He's been rehomed to a family in Europe who doesn't use him for professional purposes. I've enclosed the final royalty check from his commercial work. We wish you all the best. Emily, now 13, read the message with narrowed eyes. That's a lie, she told her parents flatly. Brave doesn't get performance anxiety. He lives for challenges. Honey, her mother began gently. Sometimes animals. No. Emily cut her off. Something's wrong. Jackson's lying. But there was nothing they could do. The legal agreement had been fulfilled, the money paid, the specified update period completed. Brave was gone, supposedly living quietly in some undisclosed European location. Emily threw herself even more intensely into her studies, particularly excelling in sciences. She attended summer programs for gifted students, earned perfect grades, and began planning for college years in advance, all while continuing to learn everything possible about animal behavior and training. At night, though, she still whispered to the emptiness where Brave had once slept. "I haven't forgotten," she promised the darkness. "Wherever you are, I'm going to find you someday." Summer heat wavered over the asphalt as 16-year-old Emily Matthews dragged her suitcase through Los Angeles International Airport. Gone was the little girl with the patched overalls. In her place stood a determined young woman with practical boots, her wheat blonde hair now streaked with natural highlights and tied back in a purposeful braid. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah had asked when Emily presented her plan to use her summer job savings for a 2-week trip to Los Angeles. 7 years is a long time, honey. Even if you find out what happened to Brave. Emily had merely nodded. "I need to know the truth." Now, standing in the California sunshine that felt so different from Montana's, Emily checked the address she'd carefully researched. The small extended-stay hotel she'd booked was near the major studios, affordable only because she'd saved every dollar from tutoring younger students and working weekends at Dr. Wendell's veterinary clinic. 3 days into her trip, Emily had already crossed 2 training facilities off her list, places mentioned in Jackson Reed's early updates where staff claimed no recollection of a particularly gifted German Shepherd. Her carefully rehearsed story about doing research for a school project on animal actors had gotten her polite but useless responses. Exhausted and discouraged, she walked aimlessly down Sunset Boulevard, staring absently at storefronts until a massive billboard across the street stopped her cold. "Coming this fall," it proclaimed in bold letters. "The adventure continues." But it wasn't the text that froze Emily in place. It was the image of a magnificent German shepherd leaping across a chasm, a young male actor following behind. Even from this distance, Emily would recognize those unique markings, that intelligent gaze. "Brave," she whispered, her heart pounding. The billboard advertised Rescue Ridge, Dangerous Waters, apparently a sequel to a film she'd never heard of. At the bottom, smaller text credited Maverick, Hollywood's most extraordinary canine star. Emily's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone to search for Maverick dog actor. Pages of results appeared, fan sites, interviews with the dog's trainer, promotional appearances. In every image, despite the professional styling and dramatic action poses, she recognized her Brave. "Jackson Reed, you lying bastard," she breathed. It took Emily less than an hour to locate information about the film's production schedule. Rescue Ridge, Dangerous Waters was currently shooting at Burbank Studios, with 6 more weeks of filming planned. The next morning found her standing outside the studio gates at 5:30 a.m., watching crew members arrive. She'd spent the night studying production terminology on film websites, practicing a confident walk, and creating a simple disguise. Hair pulled back severely, glasses she normally only used for reading, and clothes purchased from a thrift store that mimicked what she'd seen assistants wearing in behind-the-scenes photos. When a harried-looking woman approached carrying 2 trays of coffee, Emily made her move. "Can I help with those?" she offered, falling into step beside her. "I'm supposed to report to set for PA work today, and I'm a little lost." The woman gave her a grateful look and handed over 1 tray. "Thank God. Follow me. I'm heading to the Ridge set now." Heart hammering, Emily matched the woman's brisk pace through the security checkpoint. Where her companions hurried, "She's with me," was enough to get her waved through and into the sprawling complex. "First day?" the woman asked as they navigated a maze of corridors. "Yeah," Emily nodded. "I'm interning for the summer." "Well, you picked a hell of a day to start. We're shooting the river rescue scene, and everyone's on edge about the waterwork with Maverick." Emily nearly dropped the coffee tray. "Maverick? The dog? The star, you mean?" the woman chuckled. "That animal gets treated better than the director. His trainer's been impossible all week." They emerged onto an enormous soundstage transformed into a raging river scene. Dozens of crew members bustled around equipment, while actors in wetsuits received touch-ups from makeup artists. "Just set those down by the monitor," her unwitting accomplice instructed. "And good luck. Stay out of Reed's way if you want to survive the day." Emily nearly choked. "Reed? Jackson Reed is here." But the woman had already hurried off, leaving Emily standing at the edge of the controlled chaos, desperately scanning the set for any sign of Brave. A familiar voice barked orders nearby. "We need the safety divers in position before Maverick gets on set. And where's that second harness?" Jackson Reed stood near the water tank, his hair now streaked with gray, but his commanding presence unchanged. Emily ducked behind her equipment cart, pulse racing. Then she heard it, a distinctive bark that cut through the din of the busy set, sending a shock of recognition through her body. Across the stage, being led in by a handler, was Brave. Emily's legs nearly buckled. Her Brave, stood 20 yards away, magnificently groomed and muscular, his bearing regal and confident. He wore a specialized safety harness and was being fussed over by two handlers who adjusted equipment on his body while he stood with practiced patience. Emily pressed herself behind the equipment cart, suddenly terrified. What if he didn't remember her? What if 7 years had erased their bond completely? Maverick on set. "Clear the walkways," someone shouted. Jackson Reed approached the dog with the proprietary air of a man handling his most valuable asset. "Let's walk him through the marks once more before we roll." Emily watched as Brave, no, Maverick now, followed Reed's commands flawlessly, moving to specific positions on the set with military precision. His movements were perfect, but something in his demeanor struck Emily as mechanical, lacking the joyful spark she remembered. "He looks so serious," she whispered to herself. "That's because Reed works him like a machine," said a voice beside her. Emily startled, turning to find a young man in a crew t-shirt who'd appeared beside her cart hiding place. He eyed her curiously. "You knew?" "Oh, yeah. First day," she stammered. "What do you mean, like a machine?" The crew member glanced around conspiratorially. "Reed's old school. Uses some pretty harsh methods when the executives aren't looking. That dog's been in 3 major franchises and never gets downtime. But hey," he shrugged, "he's the most bankable animal actor in Hollywood, so nobody questions the results." Emily's stomach twisted. "Harsh methods. Nothing that leaves marks," he clarified quickly. He made a sharp gesture with his hand. "Discipline, you know. Anyway, you'd better look busy or someone will put you to work for real." He wandered off, leaving Emily shaking with anger and renewed determination. She watched Brave complete his rehearsal, noticing how his eyes constantly darted to Reed for approval, how his body tensed when the trainer made sharp movements. "That's not right," she murmured. "That's not how he should be." The director's voice boomed through the stage. "Places everyone. We're rolling in 5. In the ensuing commotion, Emily saw her opportunity. Grabbing a clipboard from an unattended table, she began walking purposefully toward the edge of the set, where Brave was being given final adjustments by his handlers. "Excuse me," she said with forced confidence to the young assistant holding Brave's lead. "Mr. Reed wants Maverick moved to Mark 3 for the first shot. I can take him." The assistant frowned. "That's not what I heard. Last-minute change," Emily insisted, holding out her hand for the lead. "The director wants a different angle. I need to move him now." Confusion and the pressure of the imminent filming worked in her favor. The assistant surrendered the lead with a shrug. "Whatever. Just be quick about it." Heart thundering, Emily took the leather strap, her fingers brushing against Brave's harness. For the first time, she was close enough to look directly into his eyes. "Hey, boy," she whispered, her voice catching. Brave glanced at her, then back at the set, his training keeping him focused on his expected task. "It's me," she said softly, her voice trembling. "It's Emily." His ears twitched, but his attention remained divided. Emily felt her heart crack. She hadn't expected instant recognition, but the lack of response hurt more than she'd anticipated. Leading him toward the supposed mark, she furtively reached into her pocket and withdrew a small blue ball, a replica of his favorite toy from Montana, purchased specifically for this moment. She held it low where only he could see it, rolling it between her fingers the same way she'd done when training him as a puppy. Brave froze. His nostrils flared, taking in her scent properly for the first time. His eyes tracked from the ball to her face, then back again, confusion giving way to intensifying focus. "Remember?" she whispered. "Find Emily." The command, one of the first she'd ever taught him, triggered something profound. Brave's entire body stiffened, his eyes widening as they locked on her face. A low, questioning whine escaped his throat. "Yes," Emily breathed, tears blurring her vision. "It's me, Brave. It's your Emily." The transformation was instantaneous and electric. Brave's professional demeanor shattered completely as recognition exploded through him. He lunged toward her with a joyful bark that echoed across the set, nearly knocking her over as he frantically pressed against her, whining and trembling. "What the hell?" someone shouted. "Grab Maverick." But Brave was beyond anyone's control now. 7 years of suppressed emotion poured out as he circled Emily wildly, barking and jumping, his entire body wiggling with uncontainable excitement. "Cut! Cut!" the director bellowed. Through her tears, Emily saw Jackson Reed sprinting toward them, his face a mask of fury and disbelief. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. "Get away from my dog." Brave positioned himself protectively between Emily and Reed, a low growl rumbling in his chest, a sound that silenced the chaotic set instantly. "He's not your dog," Emily said, finding strength in Brave's presence. "He never was. His name is Brave, and he remembers exactly who I am." "Security," Jackson shouted, his face flushing crimson. "Get this girl off my set now." 2 burly men in black polo shirts started forward, but Brave's growl deepened, stopping them in their tracks. The German Shepherd stood firmly beside Emily, hackles raised, a stark contrast to the obedient animal of moments earlier. "He'll bite if you come closer," Emily warned, her hand resting on Brave's back. "He's protecting me." The set had fallen into stunned silence, dozens of crew members and actors frozen in place watching the drama unfold. Phones had emerged, discreetly filming. "That's impossible," Jackson sputtered. "Maverick doesn't. He never, because you trained it out of him," Emily said, her voice carrying in the hushed space. "But you couldn't erase everything. You couldn't erase me." The director, a silver-haired man with a permanent scowl, pushed through the gathering crowd. "Reed, what the hell is happening to my $1 million schedule?" Before Jackson could answer, a tall woman in an expensive suit approached, surveying the scene with sharp eyes. "I'd like to know that too, especially since our perfectly trained star animal is currently looking ready to attack." "Ms. Winters," Jackson stammered, addressing the woman. "This is just a security breach. Some random girl. I'm Emily Matthews," she interrupted, straightening to her full height. "From Oak Ridge, Montana. I sold you Brave. That was his real name, 7 years ago, with a contract that you'd keep me updated about his welfare. 3 years ago, you told me you'd rehomed him in Europe because he couldn't handle performing." She gestured toward the billboard mock-up displayed on the studio wall. That was obviously a lie. Ms. Winters, evidently an executive of some importance, raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. "Is this true, Reed?" Jackson's demeanor shifted instantly, professional smoothness replacing anger. "There's a misunderstanding here. Yes, I acquired the dog from this girl's family years ago, but that initial contract was fulfilled. The animal had attachment issues that were interfering with training, so I made a business decision to create separation." "Attachment issues?" Emily echoed incredulously. "You mean he loved me, and you couldn't handle it?" A murmur ran through the watching crowd. The director checked his watch impatiently. "Whatever this drama is, we're burning daylight and money. Can someone get the dog back on Mark so we can shoot this scene?" "I'd like to try," a new voice interjected. A young woman with an assistant director's headset stepped forward. "I've been watching Maverick, Brave, with this girl. He's more animated than I've ever seen him on set. Maybe she could help with the water sequence? We've been struggling with it for days." Jackson scoffed. "This is ridiculous. She's not a professional trainer. She has no experience with film work." "Actually," Emily countered, gaining confidence, "I've been studying animal behavior for 7 years. I've worked with Dr. James Wendell, a veterinary behaviorist in Montana, and completed 3 summers at the Thompson Animal Science program. And I know Brave better than anyone." Ms. Winters considered Emily for a long moment. "The water sequence has already put us 2 days behind schedule, Harrison," she said to the director. "What could it hurt to try something different?" "This is completely inappropriate," Jackson protested. "The liability alone, Have her sign a waiver. Ms. Winters cut him off coolly. Let's see what she can do. The next hour passed in a blur. Emily signed paperwork, was briefly oriented to the set's safety protocols, and then found herself standing beside the director as he explained the problematic scene. Maverick, brave, needs to jump into the water, swim to the actor, allow himself to be grabbed, then swim back, pulling the actor to safety. Reed's been trying to force it using commands, but the dog seems hesitant about the water retrieval portion. Emily nodded, studying the set. May I see the prior footage? The playback showed Brave performing beautifully until the moment he needed to allow the actor to hold onto him in the water. Each time, he would pull away, swimming in circles instead of completing the rescue. He thinks the actor is in genuine distress, Emily realized. He's confused because he can smell the fear response, but his training is telling him to perform differently. So what's your solution? The director asked skeptically. Emily turned to the actor, a young man dripping wet from previous attempts. Do you actually know how to swim well? He nodded. Former college swimmer. Good. Then stop pretending to be terrified. Brave's picking up on it, and it's triggering his actual rescue instincts rather than his performance training. She turned to Jackson Reed, who stood glowering nearby. What command do you use for the retrieval? Reed's jaw tightened, but with all eyes on him, he grudgingly answered. Mark and retrieve. Emily nodded. I need 10 minutes with him before we try again. To everyone's surprise, those 10 minutes were all she needed. Emily spoke quietly to Brave, re-establishing their connection while subtly demonstrating what she wanted. When the cameras rolled, Brave performed the sequence flawlessly, jumping in, swimming to the now calm actor, allowing himself to be held, and pulling the man to safety with powerful, confident strokes. That's incredible, Ms. Winters murmured as the crew burst into spontaneous applause. I've never seen him work so smoothly. The director grinned, checking shots off his list. 3 more setups, and we're done. Can you stay to help with those too? Emily nodded, not looking at Jackson Reed's thunderous expression. Her focus remained entirely on Brave, who stood dripping but proud beside her, his eyes never leaving her face. Good boy, she whispered, her heart full. The best boy. As the final scene wrapped, the exhausted crew erupted into relieved applause. What had been scheduled as a grueling 14-hour shoot was completed in just under 9, with every take involving Brave requiring minimal reshoots, a stark contrast to the previous day's struggles. That's a wrap on Maverick for today, the assistant director called out. Emily knelt beside Brave, toweling his damp fur while he leaned contentedly against her. The day's exertion had worn on them both, but beneath her fatigue ran a current of elation. He remembered her. He still loved her. 7 years, and whatever methods Jackson had used hadn't erased their bond. Ms. Matthews. Emily looked up to find Ms. Winters standing over her, alongside a man in an expensive suit she hadn't seen before. This is Robert Chun, our executive producer, Ms. Winters explained. He'd like a word. Robert extended his hand, helping Emily to her feet. That was remarkable work today. May I ask how you learned those techniques? I didn't learn them, Emily replied honestly. Not exactly. Brave and I developed our own communication system when he was a puppy. I've studied formal training methods since then, but our connection has always been different. Interesting. Robert exchanged glances with Ms. Winters. We've invested heavily in Maverick, in Brave. He's the centerpiece of this franchise, worth millions to the studio. What happened today raises some concerns about his current training program. Emily's gaze flickered to where Jackson Reed stood across the set, engaged in intense conversation with 2 men who looked like lawyers. He's been using aversive techniques, Emily said carefully. Fear-based compliance. It works for performing tricks, but it breaks down in complex emotional scenarios, like today's water rescue. Can you prove that? Ms. Winters asked sharply. I don't need to. Emily gestured toward Brave, who sat alertly beside her. Watch his reaction when Jackson approaches versus anyone else. As if on cue, a production assistant walked past, casually patting Brave's head. The dog accepted the touch calmly. Moments later, when Jackson took a step in their direction while gathering his equipment, Brave's muscles tensed visibly, his ears flattening for a brief moment. Body language doesn't lie, Emily said softly. He's afraid of Jackson. Robert's expression hardened. We've had anonymous complaints from crew members, but nothing substantial enough to act on. Reed's results have been unparalleled until recently. Until the scripts required genuine emotional responses rather than mechanical behaviors, Emily suggested. Precisely. He studied her thoughtfully. You're still in high school, correct? Rising senior, Emily confirmed. But I've been taking college courses in animal behavior and veterinary science. And your parents? Where are they during your Hollywood adventure? Emily felt her cheeks flush. They know I'm in LA. They don't know I snuck onto a film set. Robert chuckled. Perhaps we should call them. Because I'd like to make you an offer, Ms. Matthews, but I'll need parental consent since you're a minor. 20 minutes later, Emily sat in a sleek conference room, her mother on speakerphone alternating between shock, anger, and finally bemused acceptance as Robert explained the situation. So let me understand, Sarah Matthews said, her voice crackling through the phone. You want to hire my 17-year-old daughter as a consultant for your film? As Brave's handler, specifically, Robert clarified. With proper supervision and tutoring to maintain her studies, of course. The compensation would be substantial. A beat of silence. And Jackson Reed, the man who lied to us for years, is being handled separately, Ms. Winters interjected smoothly. Our legal team is reviewing his contract as we speak. After further negotiation and promises to arrange proper accommodation and supervision, Sarah reluctantly agreed, with the caveat that she would fly out to Los Angeles within the week to assess the situation personally. As Emily exited the meeting, she found the set largely deserted except for a skeleton cleaning crew. Brave had been temporarily moved to the on-site animal holding area, a comfortable, climate-controlled space where animal actors rested between scenes. She'd been assured she could collect him after signing preliminary paperwork. Making her way toward the animal area, Emily passed a partially open door where raised voices caught her attention. This is a breach of contract. Jackson Reed's voice was tight with anger. I own that dog. Actually, Reed, came the cool reply from someone Emily couldn't see. Your contract gives you exclusive training rights, not ownership. The studio purchased all rights to Maverick from you 3 years ago. I have the paperwork right here. This is because of that girl, Jackson spat. She has no idea what's involved in this business. That dog was nothing before I transformed him. That nothing dog just completed a complex water sequence in 3 takes instead of 30, the other voice countered. And several crew members have now come forward about your training methods. We're prepared to be generous with your exit package, but make no mistake, you are exiting. Emily forced herself to keep walking, even as a wave of vindication washed over her. She wouldn't celebrate yet. Not until everything was official. But for the first time in 7 years, hope fluttered in her chest like a living thing. When she reached the animal holding area, a sleepy handler directed her to Brave's enclosure. She found him curled on a plush bed, his eyes instantly brightening when she appeared. Hey, she whispered, letting herself into the space and sitting beside him. Quite a day, huh? Brave shifted, laying his head heavily in her lap with a deep sigh that seemed to release years of tension. Emily ran her fingers through his fur, finding a small, ridged scar behind his ear that hadn't been there when he left Montana. What did he do to you? She murmured, anger and sadness mixing in her chest. Brave just looked up at her with complete trust, as if to say, it doesn't matter anymore. You're here now. Emily leaned down, pressing her forehead against his. I'm not leaving you again, she promised. Whatever happens next, we face it together. 3 months later, the autumn air carried a familiar crispness as Emily guided her mother's car down the main street of Oak Ridge, Montana. Beside her in the passenger seat, Brave sat regally, his alert gaze taking in the town that had been his first home. Everyone's going to lose their minds when they see you, Emily told him, scratching behind his ear at a stoplight. You're kind of a big deal now, you know. Brave responded with a contented huff, pressing his shoulder against her side. The bond between them had only strengthened during their time in Los Angeles, where Emily had helped complete the filming of Rescue Ridge, Dangerous Waters, before the studio's lawyers negotiated her remarkable deal, shared custody of Hollywood's most valuable animal actor. The arrangement was unprecedented but pragmatic. The studio maintained rights to Brave's professional appearances and film work, with Emily as his primary handler and trainer. In return, Brave would live with Emily during non-filming periods, returning to Hollywood 3 times a year for scheduled projects. The best of both worlds, Robert Chin had explained when presenting the final contract to Emily and her parents. He gets a real home life with someone who truly loves him, and we retain the star of our franchise with a trainer who brings out his best performances. The added benefit, a substantial salary for Emily plus a college fund, had sealed the deal. She would complete her senior year in Oak Ridge while taking online courses, then attend UC Davis for their renowned veterinary program, with Brave by her side. As they approached the town square, Emily spotted a colorful banner stretched across Main Street. "Welcome home, Emily and Brave. Oak Ridge's Hollywood stars." "Oh no," she groaned, embarrassed by the attention. Mom must have told everyone. Indeed, a small crowd had gathered in front of Gunderson's General Store, the very spot where Emily had once performed with Brave for $5 bills. Dr. Wendell was there, along with her teachers, classmates, and nearly every shopkeeper in the 4-block downtown. "Ready for your adoring public?" she asked Brave, who responded by sitting up straighter, as if preparing for his close-up. The homecoming reception lasted hours, with Emily repeatedly recounting the story of their Hollywood reunion, while Brave patiently accepted petting and praise from townsfolk who remembered him as a puppy. Mayor Wilson made a speech about Oak Ridge values and never forgetting your roots, while Mrs. Henderson passed around copies of entertainment magazines featuring Emily and Brave on set. As the crowd finally thinned, Emily found herself alone with Dr. Wendell outside his veterinary clinic. "You've started something significant, you know," he told her, his weathered face serious beneath its permanent tan. "Your approach with Brave is challenging decades of animal training orthodoxy in the film industry." Emily nodded. Jackson's methods got results, but at what cost? The studios already implemented new welfare standards based on what happened with Brave. "And the foundation?" Dr. Wendell asked. "Launches next month," Emily confirmed. "The studio's fully funding it, partly to generate good publicity after the Jackson Reed scandal broke, but I'll take whatever support I can get." The Brave Beginnings Foundation, as it would be called, would establish ethical training standards for animal actors and create scholarship opportunities for young people interested in positive reinforcement animal training careers. Brave would serve as its ambassador, with Emily as its youngest board member. "Your parents must be proud," Dr. Wendell said. Emily smiled. "They are. Dad's already renovating the garage into a training space for local workshops. Mom's handling the foundation's social media." As if summoned by mention of her parents, Emily's phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Dinner in 30. Dad made your favorite. We should head home," Emily told Brave, who had been patiently waiting nearby. "Race you to the car?" In response, Brave bounded ahead, his movement no longer the precise, measured trot of a trained performer, but the joyful gallop of a dog simply happy to run. The Matthews home had changed substantially since Brave last saw it. The peeling paint had been refreshed, the sagging porch rebuilt, and a proper fence now enclosed the expanded backyard. Inside, new furniture and appliances had replaced their worn predecessors, though Sarah had insisted on keeping the old kitchen table. "For perspective," she'd said. Tom Matthews waited on the porch, his once stooped posture now straight and strong following his completed medical treatments. His weathered face broke into a smile as Brave approached cautiously, seeming to remember the man who had once reluctantly allowed him to stay. "Well, look who's a big shot now," Tom said, kneeling despite his still tender back to greet the dog. "No hard feelings about before, right, boy?" Brave responded by thoroughly licking his face, drawing laughter from Emily. "I think you're forgiven, Dad." Dinner that night felt dreamlike to Emily, her family complete again, the wounds of 7 years gradually healing with each passing hour. As she helped her mother clear the dishes, Sarah nodded toward the living room, where Tom had fallen asleep in his recliner with Brave curled at his feet. "Full circle," Sarah observed softly. Later, as Emily prepared for bed in her childhood room, now redecorated to reflect her evolving interests but still fundamentally the same space, Brave settled into his old spot at the foot of her bed. The weight and warmth of him felt like the most natural thing in the world, as if the years of separation had been merely a temporary interruption. "You know what's weird?" Emily said to him, her voice quiet in the darkness. "If Jackson had kept his promise and sent those updates, if he hadn't lied about rehoming you in Europe, I might never have gone looking for you." Brave raised his head, his amber eyes reflecting the faint moonlight streaming through her window. And if I hadn't found you, the studio would never have changed their training practices. The foundation wouldn't exist. All those animals would still be suffering under outdated methods. She reached out to stroke his fur. Sometimes the worst things lead to the best changes. Brave scooted closer, resting his head on her pillow in silent understanding. 7 years ago, a frightened puppy and a determined little girl had found each other in a storm. Now, having weathered separations and reunions, lies and truths, they had become something more, partners in a mission larger than themselves. "We did good, Brave," Emily whispered, feeling sleep begin to claim her. "We did really good." As if in agreement, Brave gave a soft sigh, his breathing soon matching the rhythm of hers. Outside her window, Oak Ridge settled into its nighttime quiet, unaware that within its modest boundaries rested not just a Hollywood star, but something far more valuable, a friendship that had changed lives far beyond the borders of their small town. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and if you've watched all the way through, comment, "I watched the whole thing," and share your thoughts about this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the end screen. It's going to be super emotional.